Good evening, everybody. My goodness, it's absolutely fantastic to see so many people in the room today. I'm reliably informed we've got over 130 in the lecture theatre this evening and over 200 guests joining us online as well. So fantastic. We're very, very pleased you could be here. I have to do that boring thing at the beginning where I tell you that we're not expecting a fire drill, but if the alarm does go off, I'm sure most of you by now know that we should exit through the doors there, out onto the main road and turn left down Birdcage Walk where we'll assemble near cockpit steps. There's plenty of staff around, plenty of people who know where to go, but let's hope that doesn't happen anyway. I'm sure I also don't really need to let you know that you should switch off your mobiles, but if you have forgotten to do so, then please do. So, without further ado, let's move on to the main event for this evening, which is, of course, the presidential address from Clive Hickman, OBE, 139th President at the IMechE. And it gives me great pleasure just to provide you all this evening with an introduction to Clive's illustrious career. Clive Hickman was born in Coseley in West Midlands and studied at the University of Wolverhampton, Aston University and Loughborough University, holding a BSc and a PhD in mechanical engineering and an MBA. He is Fellow of the IMechE and the Royal Academy of Engineering and has served on several boards and committees of IMechE dating back to the early 1990s. During his career, he's been Chief Executive of Tata Motors European Technical Centre, Engineering Director of Tata Motors, Managing Director of Ricardo UK, and Engineering Director at Mira, and Executive Engineer with Rover Group. And I'm sure we're going to hear a little bit more about many of those roles in his address. Clive has been the CEO of the MTC since it was founded in 2010. He has recently chaired the Midlands Manufacturing Resilience Commission, won the Institute of Directors Chairs Award for Excellence and Board Practice for the West Midlands in 2020, and the Royal Academy of Engineering Sir Frank Whittle Gold Medal in 2021. He was awarded OBE in the 2022 New Year's Honours List, and on the international stage, Clive is a member of the board of the European Association of RTOs, where he represents the UK research and technology community. It's not bad, is it? So finally, just before I do hand over to Clive, be aware that there will be opportunities for questions at the end. I'm sure you're eager to give Clive a grilling, so do be thinking as you go along. And also to our online community, there is the opportunity to post questions in the normal way on the webcast system as we go along. So do please feel encouraged to do so. Over to you, Clive.
So that was a lovely introduction, Alice, but my grandchildren don't think I can read out loud. So, this chair. Why have I asked for this chair to be put here today? And I'm looking around some of our older members who will review this chair with fond memories and trepidation. And to me, it represents that the institution is celebrating 40 years of volunteering this week. And it also represents to me a conference called VTMS. VTMS is also this week, believe it or believe it not, today and tomorrow, and it's being held at the Gaydon Heritage Centre. But why VTMS? So many years ago, John Wood, who was the managing director at Mira, asked me to work with the SAE to chair that conference, the VTMS conference. And it was going to be the first conference, and it's one of our longest surviving conferences, and it's going from strength to strength. So I chaired the conference, and we set up a 2-day event here in this hall, and it was 4 sessions. We had chairman for each of the sessions, so my counterpart from the USA, he chaired the first session, and I was going to chair the last session. So we started, and the man from the USA stood in front of this chair and he introduced all the speakers. He sat down, headbutted the table. I thought, what? couldn't believe it. So I thought, that's weird. So in the afternoon, the chairman of that session stood in front of this chair, introduced the session, sat down, headbutted the table. I thought, I can't be, what's going on here? Something weird. Following morning, the chairman of the morning session stood in front of the chair, introduced all of the speakers, sat down, headbutted the table. I thought, there's no way I'm going to headbutt that table. It may be a tradition of the IMechE, I have no idea, but I'm not going to headbutt that table. So in the afternoon, I came in and I stood in front of this chair and I introduced everybody and I sat down, and the chair was about 3 inches too far back from the table. So I grabbed the two handles, tried to lift it forward and headbutted the table. So, fond memories, but trepidation. But on to the serious stuff. The IMechE has been the cornerstone of my professional life for nearly half a century. So I speak with both pride and humility as I officially begin my role as President of the Institution of Mechanical Engineers, the 139th President of this institution. Pride, because it's such a nationally and internationally significant and historic institution, where I come to stand on the shoulders of giants, not least George Stephenson, our first President, and more importantly, I stand here with humility. I'm amongst friends and colleagues, amongst my engineering family, from whom both within and outside this hall, I have learned so much and who have helped to inspire me on my journey. Why have I remained a member for so long, from joining as a graduate in 1978 to where I find myself today in this role? I suppose the simple answer is that this institution shares my values, those of integrity, a passion for excellence, a sense of purpose, and a core determination that is driven by a capacity for hard work. To begin, I'd like to recount some of my path into the profession. As a youngster, I was always surrounded by cars, old bangers in those days. But for as long as I can remember, I had an interest in engineering. And when I left school, I had the opportunity to become an apprentice, which that seemed to be the natural option for me. As I made my way through this apprenticeship, and as I imagine with many of our lives, I was fortunate that my potential was recognised. And I was upgraded onto the degree programme at what was then Wolverhampton Poly. And what really great institutions those polytechnics were. After graduating, I joined GKN as part of its graduate development programme, but that only lasted 9 months. I was asked to become manager first of the prototype shop and later prop shaft machining. And I was in my early 20s. At a time, if you can think back that far, and I can see a few of you who can, it was a time of debilitating industrial conflict. Dealing with industrial relations at that time was not the most rewarding of experiences, and I realised I really wanted to be in product development. But trying to make a sideways career move at that time was proving really difficult, and so I thought about going back to university to study for a degree. I had an interview with Professor Hewitt Neal at Aston University. I was in competition with 4 or 5 other candidates, and luckily I was selected. That changed my life. I was hopeful that Hewitt would be here with me this evening. He's a sprightly 96-year-old, but unfortunately couldn't make it, so he's listening at home. And I would like to thank him once again for all of his help and support to get to where I am today. I enrolled at Aston with sponsorship from a company in Herefordshire to undertake a vocational PhD. I then joined Austin Rover at Longbridge in the engine development department, and then I was headhunted to MIRA, Motor Industry Research Association, initially as Chief Engineer and later as Engineering Director, reporting to John Wood, one of our esteemed past presidents. I think the most notable project at that time was the Deo Laganza, which had some interesting twists and turns, perhaps to be shared on another occasion. Then followed a very brief spell in the rail industry before I returned to the automotive sector with Ricardo, rising to become Managing Director of Ricardo UK and a seat on the PLC board, courtesy of Sir Philip Foreman, another of our great past presidents. I had the opportunity to lead some really fabulous projects, both directly and indirectly, not least the Bentley that I had the honour of presenting to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, together with Wolfgang Paffgan, who was then CEO of Bentley. The Bugatti Veyron dual clutch transmission system and the design and development of the first engine manufactured by JCB. And that again is a project that deserves further discussion at another time. Whilst at Ricardo, I met one of our honorary fellows, Sir Ratan Tata, who, as they say, he made me an offer I couldn't refuse. To set up the Tata Motors European Technical Centre to become its first CEO based in Warwick, and to lead the development of the Nano in India, a project that I'm particularly proud of. More recently, I became CEO and now chairman of the Manufacturing Technology Centre, headquartered in Coventry, right in the middle of our manufacturing heartlands in the Midlands. I joined MIRA at the end of 2010, closely followed by Ken Young, the MTC Chief Technologies Officer, and we lived in a porter cabin for the first year, watching the initial building being constructed. And I can see some smiles around the rooms of other people who shared that experience with us. From there, we grew the organisation from an idea to a £100 million engineering business with 800 employees over a 10-year period. I now also chair the Transport Research Foundation, and I'm looking forward to seeing similar growth with that organisation. Engineering has served me well. However, I'm forever disappointed that our country does not recognise this profession as it is elsewhere. In Germany, for example, engineering is at the very top of the hierarchy. It would be my greatest wish to have the same acknowledgement here, recognition of what we've achieved for our country in times of peace, in times of conflict, and more recently, during the pandemic. This quote by the Duke of Edinburgh is particularly pertinent. Engineers are second only to God. Everything he didn't create has been invented by engineers. And at this point, I would also like to say how delighted I am that our King has honoured us by becoming our patron, which I think is fantastic news for the institution. When I joined the institution, the UK was experiencing a difficult period of economic downturn. That has been burnt into our collective minds. It was marked by high inflation, unemployment, poor industrial relations, which heavily impacted our manufacturing sectors. But even back then, there were signs of a bright future with the advent of automation and affordable computer systems. The decline of UK manufacturing has been a long-term trend that began in post-war period and continued throughout the 20th century. The challenges we faced in the 1970s were part of a broader transformation of the UK economy, ushering in a decade of Thatcherism, union legislation, privatisation, and the end of the Cold War. It was the start of the progress that we see today, but there's still so much more to do. As I approach my presidential year, I ask myself, what do I want to achieve? But then, more importantly, I asked, what does our membership want me to achieve? So I wrote and I asked our members of council as the representatives of the membership, and I was grateful for their mostly constructive comments. The key messages I received were resolve the issues around our trading companies, ensure the sustainability of our institution's finances, resolve the dilemma surrounding our HQ building, think global, have a greater focus on young members and skills, sort out our business operating model and our purpose, raise the awareness of our prestigious awards, and a year of positivity. In response, in November last year, we held our first institution summit with members from our trustee board and our council. The 4 priorities from that first meeting were the future of our HQ building, our financially sustainable future, our business operating model, and our purpose. We already had teams working on the first 2 priorities, and so we established task and finish groups for the latter. Progress so far. We've established a steering group which meets every month. The terms of reference and membership of the task and finish groups have been established. The purpose task and finish group is well on the way to report to the trustees board later this month with its recommendations. The high-level business model will take longer, but we do have an outlined timing plan up to the end of this year. There's been a delay in publishing our accounts this year for a number of reasons, not least because we discovered an error in the accounts which need to be corrected. However, 2023 has seen a good increase in our free reserves, and as I reported at the AGM, the disposal of Argyll Rowan is progressing and Sonaspection is being marketed for sale. However, we've achieved that improvement in our reserves at the expense of not having spent enough on our member services. We've underspent on member services this year, and it's the PEP profit that's really driven the profitability this year. So we're not out of the woods in terms of financial sustainability. We're working towards the membership vote on our future of the HQ. It's taking far longer than we would have hoped, but I think it's better to take the time to get it right than to deliver a suboptimal resolution. A second summit meeting is being scheduled, and a report will be issued to you, our membership, following that meeting. And in addition to these priorities, we still need to deliver our digital strategy, and I have a view that our institution should be having a greater influence on government policy. I think young members and skills also need to be a focus, but more on that later. In terms of having a greater influence on government policy, it's my belief that government should be less prescriptive. For example, we should not have a net zero strategy for automotive that focuses solely on electric vehicles. Government should be asking us the big questions. How do we achieve net zero by 2030? Not by mandating that all new vehicle sales will be electric by 2030, and then changing their mind to say 2035 when the vehicle manufacturers have already started to gear up for 2030. Madness. We could have helped to craft that strategy and shared how we thought that future might look. In terms of net zero, the perceived wisdom is that EVs are the answer. But what about hydrogen and its place in halting or even reversing climatic change? In his speech in 2023, past President Terry Spoor explained to us the consequences of mining lithium and other rare earth materials. And in conversations with him and Dr. Graham Horn, my successor as CEO at MTC, they confirmed that EVs do not offset manufacturing emissions until the vehicle is completed between 20,000 and 50,000 miles. Maybe there's an alternative. Other topics where we can and should influence government include creating an environment for the adoption of automation, robotics, and other advanced manufacturing technologies to make ourselves more competitive internationally, creating jobs and playing a central part in growing the UK economy. Furthermore, on that theme, how do we persuade government that automation will create, not destroy jobs? Whilst automation will create some work to become obsolete, perhaps the dull, the dirty and the dangerous kind, many more will be created in sectors such as maintenance and repair, in the fields of programming and system design, the supervision and monitoring of those systems, together resulting in increased customer demand. So whilst automation may displace some traditional roles, it will also transform the jobs market, creating opportunities that will leverage our natural human creativity, problem solving and technological expertise, the skills which, after all, delivered the Industrial Revolution and set us on the path to become a global Britain and a scientific superpower. Aspirations which I hope you agree we all should strive to achieve. And I think it's fair to say that whenever MTC has introduced automation for a customer, we have always created jobs, we've never lost jobs. But that has only been achieved by linking a reskilling and an upskilling element to the programme. I will, however, offer praise where praise is due. The government's Advanced Manufacturing Plan, published in November last year, provided the sector with some much needed investment and a degree of confidence that finally we might have been getting our message across. A paragraph from the foreword by the Secretary of State is worth repeating. The Advanced Manufacturing Plan invests in the future of manufacturing, opens markets, removes obstacles for business. It is supported by £4.5 billion of funding to unlock investment in strategic manufacturing sectors. This includes £3 billion for automotive, including batteries, and for aerospace to 2030. We're developing the cutting-edge technologies and driving our transition to net zero. It will ensure the UK remains one of the best places in the world to undertake cutting-edge research and scale new products to market. For every pound of government investment in the future of manufacturing, we're leveraging £5 of extra private sector investment. Perhaps music to our ears, a welcome statement, but we must not be seduced and revert to complacency. We must hold the government to account. We're now the 8th largest manufacturing economy in the world, but I'm sure that together we can and we must do better. I'm reminded of Kennedy's quote, the one about going to the moon in this decade and doing other things. I've always considered the lesser remembered part more compelling. We will go to the moon in this decade and do other things, not because they're easy, but because they're hard. And that's my ambition. Let's set ourselves a challenge to do things because they're hard, not because they're easy. And at this point, let me be a little bit controversial. It would be easy to raise funds by the sale of all or part of this building. I want us to take the hard route and find ways and means to preserve our heritage. This will be our legacy to future generations, a physical acknowledgement of our role in this country's history, its proximity to the seat of government, and a testament to our purpose and our ambition. As I say, not because it's easy, but because it's hard. And from a personal perspective, I don't want to be remembered as the president that sold our heritage. But I digress. The government's role should be to create the vision and ask the difficult questions. It should not be providing the answers. This is where Wilson's famous white heat of technology stumbled. It was too prescriptive and therefore stifled creativity and innovation. Again, those facilities that have made Britain great and our engineering talent be recognised across the world. And on that point, let me pay tribute to my predecessor, Giles Hartill, who has enjoyed a long and industrialist career with this institution. Thank you, Giles, for your leadership. During your presidential year, We rank top of all of the professional engineering institutions for new registrations for the 12th year in a row. Some of your other achievements: the partnership with the BBC's Bite-Sized School Tour engaged over 110,000 students. There were 1,500 endpoint assessments for engineering apprentices. We celebrated 100 years since Verena Holmes, our first woman member, joined the institution, and we're now offering over 200 different training courses, and last year there were over 10,000 days of training delivered by this institution. And it wasn't just UK focused. We have a vibrant and growing international membership, and I'm particularly proud of our student and apprenticeship challenges. Formula Student, the Unmanned Aircraft System Challenge, and the Railway Challenge continue to attract competitors from across the globe. We had teams from 37 countries competing in those competitions in 2023. And I cannot overstate the importance of our international strategy, which is vital to developing our voice. The world is shrinking and becoming more competitive. There is a race for the best technology, and the only way to win that race is to collaborate with the leaders, whether that be our traditional allies of the US, Europe or the Commonwealth, or with the wider engineering community, whether that's working from aerospace to renewables, from lasers to digital and AI, there is all to play for. The world of the future is going to look very different from the world of today. And I intend to ensure that our institution continues to build even closer and more dynamic relationships internationally, flying the flag for the IMechE across the world. Returning to our agenda, how can we maximise the impact of our membership community to promote engineering, inform opinion, and help to develop the future generation of engineers to stimulate innovation for the benefit of society? The challenge for all of us is to make this institution the voice not only of engineering, but also of manufacturing. And why not? Together we can and we will increase our influence and our visibility. And we can do that by engaging in policy advocacy through increasing our political engagement, building stronger collaborations with industry and academia, increasing public awareness of what we do and who we are, developing our education and outreach programs and promoting the participation of STEM subjects in schools, increasing and encouraging the professional development of our members, widening our contribution to research and innovation, extending our global reach, being more transparent and accountable, whilst promoting diversity and inclusion, so that we can build on our credibility and demonstrate the almost unquantifiable value of engineering to society. I've been at the heart of manufacturing all of my career, and I would like to share some reflections, not least from my most recent work with the Manufacturing Technology Centre, formerly as CEO and employee number 1 and now as the chairman. Operating at the very centre of the commercialisation of innovation in the UK and in the business of developing our national high-value manufacturing sector. The MTC is positioned to bridge the valley of death, situated at a critical phase in the innovation process, where promising research and development projects face significant challenges in transitioning from academic to the industrial and the commercial market. The phase is often characterised by the lack of funding, the lack of resources, and the lack of support, which prevent the translation of research into practical industrial applications. Addressing this problem requires a variety of approaches, whether increasing funding opportunities for translational research, improving collaboration between research institutions and industry, or enabling mentorship and support for the researchers in their work. Successful navigation of this challenge is essential for ensuring that valuable research discoveries are not left on the shelf. or worse still, exported overseas, has been so often the case in the past. I cannot overemphasize the importance of technology and its impact. It will have a profound and far-reaching across numerous aspects of society and the economy. And I would like to consider the key areas where technology is expected to have significant impact. And at that point, I have this little piece of kit. So my friend Wiggy there, Emma Wiggs, she won the Olympic gold medal in the disabled Paralympics for canoeing. And she came to us before the Olympics and said, the paddle that I've got is too big. I can't get my hands around the paddle. It's really difficult for me. Is there anything you can do? So we looked at the regulations, and there's nothing at all in the regulations about the paddle. Nobody's ever thought about the paddle. So we worked with the National Composite Centre, and we developed 4 or 5 different paddles for Emma, which she took and trialled. We changed the handle so she could get a better grip, and we made that with additive manufacturing. The shaft and the blade are carbon fibre, and the angle of the blade, we had 4 or 5 different angles so she could see which was best for her. And using that paddle, she was able to increase her stroke rate by 20%. And she won the Olympic gold medal by over 5 seconds. We also managed to get our advertising on the paddle, which is really interesting. You can't put advertising on the canoe, but nobody said you couldn't put it on the paddle. So Emma, when we talked to her about what it was that had been the benefit, she said there were 2 significant benefits. The first one was that paddle increasing her stroke rate gave her about 4 seconds advantage. But the other advantage, about a second, was when she was sitting on the start line and she was concentrating on the start, all the other competitors were concentrating on her paddle. So coming back to technology, AI and automation will continue to reshape industries and the workforce, increasing efficiency, reducing costs, and changing the nature of work. Technology will drive the development and adoption of renewable energy sources such as solar, wind, to combat climate change and reduce our reliance on fossil fuels, and will provide a greater degree of energy security, increasingly important in our volatile geopolitical world. Personally, I would like to see tidal energy play a greater part in that portfolio of sustainable options, and geothermal energy is already within our grasp. Electric cars, autonomous vehicles, and high-speed transportation systems will revolutionise the way we travel. Technology is expanding across education through online learning, virtual classrooms, and personalised learning. Technology will continue to reshape society with innovations in 5G, virtual reality, augmented reality, and real-time language translation. And in terms of the environment, technology will play a pivotal role in monitoring and addressing environmental challenges such as climate, deforestation, and wildlife conservation. And all of that links well to our new strategy to transform the IMechE into a global, inclusive, and digitally enabled engineering community so that we can deliver our mission of improving the world through engineering. During the first wave of the pandemic, the manufacturing sector rose to the challenge, providing face masks, face shields, ventilators, and a host of other equipment that was essential for our NHS to function. In those activities, we felt a sense of pride in what we'd achieved, particularly in the face of arguably the greatest crisis that this country has faced in the last 70 years. And as the sector has done so often before, we demonstrated our ability to respond to the emergency and with lightning speed. And in doing so, we emerged with newfound confidence. Now we must harness that potential of the emerging technologies, including automation, digital, laser and AI. But my concern was that when the pandemic was over, we would slip back into our old ways. We needed to improve our productivity, embrace those emerging technologies, and develop our skills base to build resilience into the system, to meet the needs and challenges facing this generation and generations to come. So to begin, I was invited by the former Mayor of the West Midlands, Andy Street, to create a commission to be known as the Midlands Manufacturing Resilience Commission, or M2R for short, that would be able to deliver positive impact for the Midlands in its role as the cornerstone for our economic recovery. To understand the need for resilience in manufacturing, I chaired around 20 virtual roundtables with about 200 participants that came from industry, academia and government. And we discussed the prevailing challenges: skills, productivity, supply chains, innovation, leadership and finance, and how we wanted our region's identity and reputation to be seen. And our work appeared to capture the imagination of the region, acknowledging our identity and our heritage as the once great workshop of the world. I'd like to share some of our findings. Innovation is a recurring theme in our heritage. We have the capability and the capacity to adapt to change and to the challenges, but we lack confidence, belief, and the leadership to respond. There is fragmented support for manufacturing. We need a unifying agenda with consistent and coordinated interventions. We need a balanced package of support, including capital allowances, R&D tax credits, access to growth capital, and access to patient capital. We need financial protection to support our SMEs to take on bigger challenges. And we need to embrace advanced manufacturing technologies that have the potential to improve productivity and growth, creating sustainable, high quality and well-paid jobs. We need to create space for our leaders, especially in the SME community, to work on the business, not in the business. And we need to focus on things where we can become world-class. We need a better balance between academic and vocational training with a focus on skills to enable the adoption of advanced manufacturing technologies. And from these findings, we created a vision to build on our heritage, coordinated and consistent intervention, an effective and growing mid-sized tier of manufacturing businesses, confident and agile SMEs with greater access to finance, collaborative, commercially driven, integrated supply chains, reshored and externally focused, strong business leadership in the supply chain, leaders working on the business, not in the business, and an excellent skills base to deliver sustainable, high quality and well-paid jobs. And I'm sure you will all agree the skills gap is one of the greatest challenges for the manufacturing sector in this country and internationally. Throughout evidence hearings, this was one of the most frequently flagged topics and reflected the view that manufacturing is all about the ingenuity of people and their ability to change the world. Helping people develop their skills is something that is very close to my heart, which is why, along with Professor Ken Young, we created the Training Centre at MTC. That aspect of our business now has 1,000 young people on our bespoke apprenticeship programme and benefits from £1 million sponsorship per year from Lloyds Bank. As well as developing our own apprentices in all areas of the business, the MTC encourages its industrial members, its technical partners and the supply chain to do the same through our apprenticeship programme. We're playing our part in trying to address this issue by helping to develop the pipeline of talent for the future. And it's fair to say that without the support of Lloyds Bank, this training programme would not have been possible. And so a big thank you to Lloyds Bank. I would also like to thank Innovate UK, without whom the MTC journey would not have been possible. MTC is now the 4th largest trainer of manufacturing engineers in the country, but we're scarcely scratching the surface. More funding is required to bridge that skills gap that our industry is facing. In parts of the West Midlands, we have 4th generation who've never had a job. And the Midlands region isn't unique. We have the talent pool to address our skill shortage. And so I call on our government to recognise this dilemma. Industry and academia can play our part, but we need more government support. Developing engineers of tomorrow is so important to me that today I'm pleased to announce the launch of what will become the annual Hickman Education Awards here at IMechE, and that I will contribute £100,000 to that programme over the next 10 years. I invite members of the audience and others to join me to build on that endeavour and make these awards truly transformational in terms of their significance that will, I hope, inspire young engineers over the next decade. We as manufacturers make things for many reasons, not least because the products of manufacturing change people's lives. For the better in so many ways: food, drink, healthcare, transport, entertainment, and many, many more. The way we live our lives is changing rapidly. We know we need to make big changes to our consumption patterns if we're to tackle climate change and our need to respond to the challenges of operating in a post-Brexit world. Now we must do all of that in an environment where we've experienced a pandemic and we've seen firsthand our personal and our national vulnerabilities. Our objective must be to enable not just the Midlands, but the whole nation to be able to become a resilient manufacturing powerhouse, prepared for whatever shocks may be in store, whether those be political, environment, technological, or even another pandemic. And I'd like to leave you with one thought. Britain became great based on academic research, engineering endeavour, and a strong manufacturing base. It's now time to reclaim that initiative. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Clive. It's now the moment when we turn to the opportunity for questions from the audience. So I'm going to be taking questions in the room, questions also online. Do feel free to post your questions. You ready? Be nice, it's the presidential address, okay? Do we first have questions in the room? Colin, I'm sure I've gone to you first for the last 2 sessions. I'm going to go to John instead. And John, if you wouldn't mind just waiting for the microphone to come to you, just so we can be heard online as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for that address, and particularly may I be the first in the room to say thank you for those awards. Really inspiring. Surprisingly, I'm reasonably satisfied with the IMechE's efforts on educational outreach and our efforts. I usually ask a question about that, but not this time. I still think that we fall short on that globally, but there are different situations, and I recognise we need to be sensitive on that. But you've mentioned 2 or 3 times our move towards let's call it globalisation, but a greater reach internationally. I'm convinced that we have to be international if we're going to survive, and I'm glad that's embraced. You've had a copy of the report from our team in Japan, as has Alice and Giles and so on. and I'm delighted that they are doing so well. Producing that report has exposed me to the fact that we have a strategy for international development. I wonder if you would be prepared to explain to the room what some elements of that strategy, so that we can support it and therefore make sure that we have an international future.
Yeah, John, that's a good point. And I have read your report from the Japan group. And what we need to do is the problem that we faced very recently, over the past 3 or 4 years, is that we're putting money to one side for member activities, and that money is not getting spent. And that's both here nationally and internationally. And so what Alice and I are looking to do, along with the trustee board in the coming year, is understand what the barriers are to spending the money that we have available, to make sure that we spend up to that limit. In the meantime, as a short-term fix, we've created a pot where when a region or a division, or whether local or international, finds they need some more money to do something, they can come directly to the chair of the finance board, and that gives the chair of the finance board the opportunity to provide that incremental funding. And I'm hoping that's going to be a big start to how we can deliver that.
Thank you. I would just say that it's not always money, it's other things.
Thank you. Let's continue
thanks,
the international angle with a question coming in online, actually, but a slightly different take. So the question begins, good evening, Clive. Thank you for a very thought-provoking presidential address. Can you share with us insights that you might have on successes outside of the UK in terms of addressing skills gaps and manufacturing success? And the international link is also that this question comes from Sarah Haslam, who's currently in Turkey, joining online.
Yes, Sarah sent me a little note that said she was hoping to be here today, but couldn't get back from Turkey because the work wouldn't let her come out. She's still got to carry on there. So, yeah, it's really important that we develop the whole aspect of the work that we're doing in the international arena. And for that reason, for my presidential visit this year, I'm intending to go to Singapore, to Australia, and then back through India, plus getting across the European areas, and hopefully find out more from our international members what we can do to support them better in the future.
Thanks, Clive. There's always much to be learned, I'm sure. I'm going to come back to the room for one final question. Kerry in the middle there. Rob, can you see?
Thank you. Kerry Mashford, Fellow. Clive, excellent run through on history and also what you're planning on the future and what we're currently doing. Obviously, we're in an election year, government election year, and I'm just interested in the point you made, particularly about influencing policy and the like. What are you aware of that we're doing already as an institution to try and shape the various likely participants in any future government to adopt more of our approach and to listen to us more effectively?
I think, Kerry, one of the things that we do well is the policy documents that we write and that we submit. But what I think we need to do more of is get more of those politicians into this building, showing them what we're about as an institution and showing them what we can do to help them. So the policy documents are only part of the solution. It's how we follow that up and how we build on the capability for the future. And I'm really pleased to see that Baroness Brown is with us this evening, and hopefully she'll be able to support us taking back some of the messages that we've given out today.
Thank you, Kerry. A very good question, and we were discussing it just only earlier today. I think it's so important that we continue to drive home that message about engineering being the source of solutions to many of the policy priorities that we'll see coming out from whichever side of the house, I think. Super. Now, normally at this point, I would be moving straight to the vote of thanks. But I'm going to suggest that we return to an earlier part of our evening, which we all practiced so hard for. Thank you for that. Yes, I'd like to go back to announce the EngTech of the Year for 2023. And the citation reads, chosen for their passion for engineering and for their commitment to their professional development, this individual leads their company's entry into the National Engineering Open House Day, which saw the attendance of over 150 young people from the area showcasing engineering careers and STEM. And once again, because you did it so well before, we're going to build the suspense with a bit of a drum roll. After... Thank you very much, audience. You're very generous. So I'm delighted to invite Artur Majkrowski to the stage to accept his award from Sellafield Limited. Please do join us.
Thank you very much.
Now, happily, Artur is also providing the vote of thanks for this evening, so that's just segued beautifully. Artur.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. What an evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. And the events team has assembled this party of fantastic engineers and esteemed guests for this amazing honor. And it is my honor to be here. In fact, a novel experience as well, visiting the headquarters for the first time. So I wish to express my gratitude to everybody in the room, as well as Clive Hickman here, OBE, for this amazing event, and also to the institution for the work it carries on doing. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you, Artur. So while I have you, guests in the room, guests online, I would just like to take the opportunity to let you know about some forthcoming events. So we have our next prestige event, which is the James Clayton Lecture, which will be here on the 4th of September. So please do mark that in your diaries. And following that, we will have the institution's annual dinner, which will be hosted by Clive at the Manufacturing Technology Centre on the 21st of November. So without further ado, I'd just like to invite us all to thank Clive one more time in the usual way. Very good. Very good. And please do join us for a networking opportunity downstairs in the Marble Hall. Thanks.